Hi, today is the 2nd of July, and excuse the old wig with the Kochi bandana tea towel thing on my head. I work in the kitchen over at Daily Bread now, and you have to have your head covered mostly, so that's why I'm wearing my old wig, because this wig is completely destroyed. Um, for various reasons. It just got old and it's destroyed. I would like to speak about a few things. Apparently, this is what's happening now because of the microphone in my hearing aid. The CEO of the Daily Bread, Mr. Neil Hetherington, if I'm saying his name correctly, contacted someone at, I may be wrong, James Goodrich, who is on the board of directors, by the way. It stated that if there was a microphone in my hearing aid and it was linked over to 268 Atwell, and it was linked over to 268 Atwell Drive, that there was going to be a lawsuit from Daily Bread over to Cash Fire Toronto. The other thing is that Melanie Regato had contacted Richard Ansing, who works in the warehouse, and he and a few other, who else, I think it was, as well as Jeffrey Wong, who was contacted. He's the head of the volunteer department, stating that, first of all, I was dealing drugs at Daily Bread. Second of all, and that's why my bags get checked, and I could care less. There was another woman in production hall who is a table captain. Now, a table captain is someone who is a volunteer and has been volunteering a long time, who has put in so many hours, and who knows where things go, how things are done, and how things, in terms of basically everything for food sorting, not only what boxes they go into, but in terms of where the medication goes that we get donated, in terms of when large items go, we get donated de-alcoholized wine, de-alcoholized beer, and other items. There are certain items that get thrown out, and there are certain items that get put in another box, the medication, for instance, and certain items like the de-alcoholized wine and de-alcoholized beer gets put over in another area completely. So there are table captains who know how to do certain things like that, and also to weigh the water and the juice and the non-alcoholic both beer and the wine, de-alcoholized beer, de-alcoholized wine. All of that has to be weighed in the production hall, and it has to be noted. And so table captains do things like that. I knew things like that, so they were actually speaking about me being a table captain at one point. But because there were two table captains in the food sorting, had stated, along with Richard Ansing, who works in a warehouse, and I think that's it, had told the volunteer coordinator, as well as the head of volunteer, that I was a mental patient and a drug dealer. Now this is coming down and trickling down from Toronto. Jonas Regato and Melinda Jeffries are both people who bring in actually to Daily Bread. They give drugs. They give methadone. So this individual at the Daily Bread warehouse, I have spoken to someone in charge and let them know this, that they are actually trying to deal drugs in and out through Daily Bread, throughout the GTA. Melanie Regato is going around stating that she's my friend. Melanie Regato contacted Daily Bread and stated that my chef jacket, which I wear now because the head of the department stated that I could wear my chef jacket, and one of the head chefs stated, yes, you can wear your chef jacket. Those who have of their own can wear them and bring them in. My chef jacket, is actually a jacket, or similar to what they said was a restraining jacket that I wore in the mental institution down in Niagara, and they allowed me, because of therapy, to stitch what I have on it. Is actually, my chef jacket has the Canadian Food and Wine Institute, the Canadian flag, and the Niagara College logo on the back. I got it when I was in hotel restaurant management. Brian Beccaria was my director. I took culinary courses. Chef Michael Olson, the husband to Anna Olson, Chef Anna Olson was the director over in the culinary department, and so the culinary classes in the hotel restaurant management course, the culinary classes required us to have a knife kit, which I did get. I still have, and a chef outfit. I have one chef jacket. We were allotted one chef jacket, and chef pants. I had two pairs of chef pants at the time. So Melanie Regato is going around stating this. I don't know where she gets her things, in her mind, her ideas. I have no idea. She comes up with them very, very nicely, I might add, and I'm being sarcastic. So now she's going around saying she's my friend. So if she was my friend, and I've stated, with friends like hers, I don't need enemies. If she was my friend, then why would she continuously call places and tell them that I'm a drug dealer and a mental patient? And then why would she continuously go put on a wig, similar to my blonde wig now, and run around, take off her clothing, put on glasses, run around naked, scream and start crying and start getting angry and start crying and start using Duncan's name as well. She did that at Terminal 1 in the airport. She started screaming about how she needed to see Duncan Smith, and she was running up and down in the air in Terminal 1. And it was with a wig, blonde hair wig that was matted, that had bobby pins in them. When I'm out with my blonde haired wig, I know I've been spoken to that the fact that some people think that I am Melinda Jeffries. First of all, Melinda Jeffries is probably over 250 pounds. It was the last time I saw her. That's what she was. I don't know if she's still that weight. I don't have any problem with people being overweight. That is their issue. That is something they have to deal with, whether it's medically, whether it's an eating disorder, or whether it's just raw, poor eating habits. I am 145 pounds. I look nothing like Melinda Jeffries. I smell nothing like Melinda Jeffries. Melinda Jeffries coats her hair, and she is a methadone addict as well as a dealer. As well, Melanie Regato and Melinda Jeffries and Sandra Long, like I said repeatedly, are accessing places such as the TTC and shutting down the subway, which is what they did the other day. I think it was over at St. Patrick's Station. They shut that down because Melinda Jeffries shows up in a stolen Paladin security outfit and states that Sandra Long said that I'm bringing suitcases in with a bomb in it. Sandra Long will be charged, as so will Jonas Regato, but mostly Sandra. Excuse me. Excuse me. Sandra Long will be charged, and actually that has been charged formally with terrorism, stage phase 1 and phase 2. Terrorism, if you look it up, phase 1 and phase 2 is putting in a surveillance camera and a microphone for the purpose of looking at somebody's daily actions or gaining information for someone's daily actions, which is what she's done since 2020. 5 years. 5 years of my life has been on camera, has been through a microphone. 5 years where the office, when it has been revealed, people walk in and they say, "Where is the Michelle Show?" I'm not a show. I'm a person. I'm a person who has a lot of faith. I'm a person who has been thrown out of places because of Melanie, because of Jontis, because of Melinda Jeffries, because of Ash, because of Sandra Long, because of Murray Smith. I'm a person who's been pat searched at the border because of Ash, because of Murray Smith, because of Sandra Long, and because of Ed Verhaven. I'm a person who's been thrown out of homes. I'm a person who's lost jobs because of Jonas Regato and Melanie Regato and Sandra Long and Melinda Jeffries and Ash and Lillian Brown and Norman Brown. I'm a person who has had mail stolen because of Norman Brown and Lillian Brown and Sandra Long and Melanie Regato and Jonas Regato and Melinda Jeffries. I'm a person who has stood strong and who has learned about what vetting schedules are, which we call raping schedules. And I'm a person who found out about what the enemy is doing in Catchfire Toronto and Catchfire Raleigh and Queensway Church on the Queensway, and Catchfire Kitchener in terms of setting up and raping young women, raping young men, and raping in the name of senior leadership, exercising senior leaderships, and having young girls and young boys be molested constantly. I found this out because of that microphone and because of that camera. I found that out and stood strong for each one of you who walk around and who support me, and knowing the fact that and are speaking out for black and beige and pink, black and beige and blue, black and beige and orange, black and beige and yellow, black and beige and purple, and I pray black and beige and green, and black and beige and red, and black and beige and white. And the courage that each one of you have to stand up and stand strong and to speak out about that. That's an amazing thing. And that's our Heavenly Father's work in you. I am still being spoken to by people who like Norman Brown and who come up to the camera, as well as people who've entered the office like Mark DuPont and like Tracy Giesbrecht, who is a former leader at the Father's House in Niagara, like Lyndall Cooley, who is a member of the enemy's camp and who comes in and out and requests and continuously states that I am to have a raping schedule. That goes on all day, every day, and no matter where I am. No matter where I am. So, my question is this. No lawyer will take my case. Duncan has spoken to me and we've discussed it. And how we've discussed it is because Sandra Long and Jessica Newber refuses to release any money, and Kate Daniels left me in the airport with $7,000 in her pocket. And the reason why these people will not give me money is because the clauses, those stupid damn clauses that state that any companion, once they do not receive money, cannot speak to their companion. This dates back to when Lyndall Cooley and Mark and Kim DuPont. Mark DuPont and Lyndall Cooley were at odds. They didn't like each other because Lyndall Cooley had insisted that Kim DuPont would be his Cooley woman, which is what they're called, and Cooley woman back in the day. And because Mark was in love with Kim, and there was the clause stating that unless they didn't receive any money, until they receive money, a companion cannot call. They can only, I don't know how they would get in touch with them, but anyways, they cannot call them on a regular basis, such as in a regular relationship, right? Well, okay, so now we have Lyndall Cooley and Mark DuPont and Kim DuPont. This was before Mark and Kim got married. So these clauses were written, and then it went down and down and down, and finally the clause was written that after they received money, I do not know how Mark and Kim had actually gone through it, and they managed to keep the relationship alive, and that they managed to probably get notes back and forth that's in the church. That's how I found out, not regular phone calls. Anyways, that's because now Mark DuPont and Lyndall Cooley, until such time as Lyndall Cooley kind of let Kim released, because it's a very fine line between being abusive and between having this kind of strange relationship, right? And very controlling. Linda Cooley was very controlling and very abusive to Kim. Mark was in love with Kim. And so they wrote this clause. And then finally, what ended up happening is that Linda Cooley was on the board of directors, and Kim got her money, and they got released. And then Mark and Kim got married, and they left the country. And I may be missing some information, but anyways, Mark and Kim left the country after they got married, and they ended up, the Heavenly Father gave them their own ministry. And Linda Cooley was just, I'm going to say it, Linda Cooley was known as a jackass. And Duncan still calls him a jackass, and I call him a jackass. I'm not allowed to. Anyways, so, and that's the way it was when John Arnott first had his companion. His companion was named, her name was Crystal. And because Carol didn't like John's, you see, you people don't like the fact that I have all this information and that I'm sharing it. Welcome to the Michelle Show. So John Arnott had Crystal as his companion. He fell in love with her. That's the tender side of John Arnott that nobody knows. He fell in love with her. Carol didn't like her. Carol was sick at the time, because there was a time when Carol was sick. So what ended up happening is, because Carol didn't like Crystal and John's relationship, and knew that John was in love with Crystal and Crystal was in love with John, and what had happened is that for 13 months Crystal led the life that I did. Crystal ended up leaving, she ended up homeless, she ended up going through sleeping in hotel lobbies, sleeping in other places with her suitcases. At one point she was in a motel in Burlington, and John Arnott's bodyguard would bring her food. This went on for 13 months, and then finally Crystal got her money. But she didn't only get her money, because Linda Cooley had written a clause stating that if a companion receives over $750,000, they have to have sex with a board member. I don't know how many board members, or they have to have, a board member. They have to have sex with a board member. Whatever. Anyways, so Crystal received her money. There was a huge payout in the sense that the Cash Fire Toronto, which at the time was probably Toronto Airport Christian Fellowship, had to they set her up in a home. They made sure that she was safe and secure in a home. John obviously never married her, stayed with Carol, and continued the ministry that they have. And then, of course, John had another companion, probably very many. Melanie Regato was one of John's girls. Melanie Regato got pregnant with Lara. Lara is, in fact, one of John's daughters. There are other companions of John's, former companions, which actually John has fathered another child that I know of, that I'm going to keep silent for the sake of the child. It is well known that Lara is John's girls, but however, it's also known that Jasmine is Duncan's daughter, as well as Summer and Theodore, the former Theodore who left this earth after Melanie was told by Melinda Jeffries to put him in a bath of scalding pig's blood. And he is an angel of courage now. But Summer and Theodore are Murray's daughter. And, Summer is Murray's daughter. So it's Duncan's niece. But what has happened is that because John they have struck a deal, and what has happened is that Duncan has actually taken over any kind of, has said that she's a Smith. Lara and Jasmine and Summer are now living with James and Natalie, and I hope I'm not telling any tales out of school, and please forgive me if I am. They have actually they've stepped up, such as well as Cadis and Daniel at some point. They've stepped up, and they've given them a beautiful place to live, a beautiful home, and they have done so well, and and with the three girls, having them there and trying to deal with people like Norman Brown or people like Mary Audrey Raycroft or people like Melanie Regato who insist, and even Murray, who insist on having them Lara, Jasmine, and Summer. Summer's 3, Jasmine's 6, Lara's 8, and having raping schedules for them. They don't bring them in the office very often anymore, but that's what they insist on. They insist on it because they feel it's their right to do so. Melanie has repeatedly stated that Lara and Jasmine have been conditioned and they should be brought up in order to be like her. Melanie is known around the church office as the whore of Catch the Fire. Melanie walks around saying she's a branded woman and she's enjoying being a whore. And that's said more than once. And there's jokes going on as well. And I'm not being vindictive. I'm not being angry. Not at all. I'm telling the truth. There's jokes going around that Melanie doesn't even go to a lingerie store, to buy panties because she doesn't have enough time to wear them. So this is what I'm telling the truth about. It is time for this to stop. I'm also going to say this. A lot of it is Ed Verhaven. Ed Verhaven threatens people like Tracy. Ed Verhaven threatens. Now, I do believe that Jontas Regato and Melanie Regato worked on their own in this sense, because Melanie said that Jontas needed a companion. I'm like 55 years old and 50 years old. Jontas to me looks like a boy man. He's I thought he was in his 20s or early 30s. I have no idea how old he is. He's a maniacal mental patient. He was taken out of a mental wellness center in Brazil and brought back to Canada because Melanie, I'm sorry, I'm rubbing my knee. I fell off the TTC bus today and I smashed my knee on the pavement. He was brought back to Canada because Melanie was pregnant with Lara, and John needed a husband for Melanie, and so therefore they gave him a position here in Toronto, and so Melanie needed a husband, and there you go. They brought him back. He is maniacal. He is a mental patient. He is diagnosed, and he spent 3 months in a mental wellness facility in Brazil. So, anyways, they had gotten into this thing where Sandra Long had stated, well, Michelle's single, you could have her as a companion. Okay. There is a clause stating that a companion can only be 10 years older or 10 years younger than the man. So the woman can only be, I think the relationship, I call the relationship, I've told Duncan that many, many times, there can only be a 10-year gap. Duncan and I made it just under the wire. He's 65 and I'm 55, and his birthday is 3 days before mine. Yes. No. Yes. No. 1 month before mine. 1 month on the day. Yeah, 1 month before mine. His birthday's a month before mine. His birthday, yeah, okay. Anyways, so we made it under the wire, and it says 10 days. Jonas Regato and Melanie Regato had wanted to, therefore, for 4 years, decided to ruin my life if I wouldn't become Jonas's companion. There is a clause, in order to become a companion to a woman, they have to see you out in the open for seven times. You have to, over the course of a 2-year span, you have to consummate in a relationship. You have to consummate sex, okay? Or you have to solidify, or you have to consummate. If the companions don't like being a companion, if it doesn't work out, there's a 3-month span of try it out. Try it out for 3 months. The woman is not supposed to have a choice, especially if you're single. And if you're married, the woman has to, the wife has to like you. And I was lucky at the time Kate liked me. But this was before Duncan got divorced back in May of 2024. So that's what it is. Um, I also want to state that Melanie continues to call the police. Like I've stated before, Duncan's bodyguard and Kate's bodyguard spent a week here, approximately a week here, going from every police division from Niagara to Halton to Peel and to finally Toronto, and have me completely exonerated. I've been investigated because when Duncan first asked me, we need to investigate you, I'm like, okay, excuse me, investigate me. Go right ahead, investigate me. I don't care. The most they ever found was that I have an exorbitant amount of speeding tickets, and speeding, yeah, and parking tickets. Now my driver's abstract resulted in the fact that I had my driver's license suspended because I had grand mal seizures, and I had epilepsy, which really was diagnosed because Marie was very abusive, and I was thrown downstairs, I was thrown up against walls, I was hit over the head repeatedly. If I take off my wig, there are like right here in the center of my head here, there's an indentation, right? And over here, there's little indentations in my head. That's as a result of the abuse I suffered when I was a child. Also, because I don't know if back in the 1970s, there was a, what's that called? Experimental. There was when EEGs were experimental at the time. I was 6 or 7, maybe 5. Anyways, I had an EEG. And because they were experimental at the time, they also resulted in, and you can see that I'm not ever going to take off my wig on camera, by the way, but you can also see this on my head. There's all little indentations as a result of the experimental EEGs that I had repeatedly over at St. Joseph's Hospital from my pediatric neurologist, which never should have happened. I don't think it never should have happened, but that's how it was. Medical sciences have actually moved forward, majorly. So I haven't had an EEG since I was a child, but that's what's happened because of the abuse I've suffered. I have large indentations in my head, and when I was younger, and I also have little dots on my head, and also because of the abuse I've suffered. At one point, Marie had actually put steel or wires in my mattress, and every time she got angry, she would press this button. So all over my back, there's little indentations of bruises, and because I've lost a lot of weight. I've lost like 150 pounds, 200 pounds. So because I'm 140 pounds now, they are a little bit more pronounced than they were when I was very overweight. I used to wear a size 24 at some point, very overweight. So now they're more pronounced. That's why quite often I will not wear anything backless. I do have a backless dress, but I will be putting a wrap around it when I finally do wear it. I've had a lot of healing, but the reality is at some point I have to say, I'm not going to answer you when you talk to me through the microphone, Norman Brown, Melanie Regato. It's my fault too, because when I come back and there's the microphone, and yes, there's a little camera that I can't get, which I've showed everybody that I can't take off. It's my fault. For 5 years of my life, I've had that, and it's only been about since 2022, so 3 years of my life which I've known about it, and there's been conversations, and there's been me discussing things and me asking questions, mostly because I can communicate with Duncan through there. And when I said last time about how I didn't like talking to Murray, the only reason why I didn't like talking to Murray, and the only reason why, and he knows this, is because he'll come up to the microphone and he'll try and talk, and he cannot complete a sentence. And I have ADHD where I have to focus on something. I have adult ADHD, that's attention deficit hyperactive disorder. And so I have to focus and write. And plus, with my stroke, my what I had in 2014, my stroke, and my 7 TIAs, I have to kind of focus and write things down and everything. So when Murray comes to the microphone and starts to speak, I'm like, are you going to finish your sentence now? Are you going to finish your sentence now? Murray, are you going to finish? And then he walks away. So that's the only reason why. Yes, I don't have anything against Murray. When Duncan and I get married, and we are going to get married eventually, despite the uproar from Jessica Nibber and the uproar that happens from Sandra Long and the uproar that happens occasionally from Kate, which I think she's actually has agreed to at some point because of certain situations that have happened. He's on his way back from Zimbabwe. He's on the air somewhere over the he left Heathrow about 2 hours ago, an hour and a half ago. So he's on his way back to Durham. He hasn't, so yeah. I, on the other hand, am here in Mississauga praying. I'm setting up to stay here for the duration of the summer. It's near Daily Bread, and it's actually near very close proximity to where I can get to market and where I can get to my Nigerian family. They live in North York, so it's just I just need to get down to Islington Station and go up to North York subway station. Very easy. It's on the border of Etobicoke and Mississauga. I don't know what else to say, but I do know that if Castle Fire doesn't calm down, and in terms of threatening Daily Bread, in terms of calling Daily Bread, in terms of trying to infiltrate Daily Bread, they're going to find themselves with a lawsuit. Me, I know that at some point, I know that people such as Georgie and Winnie Banoff came in and they're fighting for money for me. Carol Arnott, Mrs. Carol Arnott, and I do call her Mama Carol because that's what Duncan asked me to do so, and I will do that out of respect. She has been fighting for money for me. Patricia and John Bootsma have been fighting for money for me. Dr. Heidi Baker has been fighting for money for me. So they all are. Then you have people like Linda Cooley, who's being an idiot and following me. He's following me. He's been trying to kidnap me. He's been trying to get me in a raping schedule. And then you have people like, Mark DuPont, who doesn't follow me, but who wants me in a raping schedule. Then you have people like Norman Brown, that's the same thing. But Norman Brown, realistically, he's not a leader. And Linda Cooley, he's a former board member, and he thinks he could come into the office and do whatever, have any kind of say in anything. But realistically, he doesn't. Nobody likes him there. Murray doesn't like him there. I don't know who else would like him there. I know Zachary doesn't like him there. I know that. Who else? John Arnott himself has asked him to leave. So that's the right. So I just wanted to state that I'm not angry. I'm not upset. Not anymore, anyways. I'm in a little bit of pain because what had happened was I was coming back from Daily Bread today, and I went to step off the TTC bus, and the individual who I thought had lowered the bus, he had raised it while I was speaking to him, and I fell flat on the cement sidewalk and smashed my knee. So at the advice of James Gimrich, I'm going to put some